I'm Kevin Thorley, and in my article, I talked about why beginner fish keepers always tend to kill their fish. First, I interviewed Nick Rayner. In this interview, we will explore why beginner fish keepers often face failure and what their experiences reveal. This is what Nick Rayner had to say about his first experience.
I remember back when I was 7, I believe, I started a fish tank because lots of my friends had fishes and I sort of had to prove to my parents that I was ready for a pet or I could move on to a dog or something like that.
Right away, we see a common starting point: motivation based on emotion or pressure, not knowledge. Many beginners, like Nick, see fish as a simple starter pet, a way to prove themselves, without fully understanding the responsibility involved.
It started off pretty nicely, from what I can remember. Fish was enjoying himself, I was feeding him well, and then bloody 2 months into it, come back home, old Karen's dead. She's gone.
This is another typical pattern. Things seem fine at first. The fish eats, swims, and looks healthy. But beneath the surface, water conditions, tank size, or cycling issues might be causing unseen stress. Sudden death, especially in the first few months, is common for beginners who aren't yet trained to spot the early signs of trouble.
Well, my parents knew a bit, so I had a chat with them, and they were like, "Yeah, sweet, we can get this fish, no worries." Went to the store, and the employees gave me some tips and tricks to try.
Advice from others, like parents or pet shop staff, is helpful, but it's not always enough. Beginners often rely on secondhand knowledge without fully understanding the science behind fish keeping.
I was 7, so I feel that played quite a big part. My awareness was quite low on like what I had to do, like the feeding and stuff like that. So it's definitely on me, but I feel like my parents could have been there for me. But yeah,
Support is crucial. At a young age, it's hard to fully take responsibility without active help. Nick's reflection shows how beginners, especially children, may be set up to fail if adults around them aren't consistently involved.
literally came home from school. She was out of it. Tried CPR, didn't crack it. Yeah, so wasn't great.
Tragic, but also telling. Fish can jump if the tank doesn't have a lid or if they're stressed. This is something beginners often don't know and don't think to ask about. It shows how even small, overlooked details can lead to major outcomes. Now I'll be interviewing Toby Shah on his pet fish. I first started a fish tank because my friend Oscar, when I was at St. Mark's, I was 8 years old. He had a fish tank. I went to his house every week and saw his fish, and I thought they were actually very cool. And I wanted to start a fish tank myself when I saw his fish tank because it really inspired me. Many people are introduced to fish keeping by seeing someone else's tank, and they want one too. The problem is they often jump in without fully understanding what fish needs to survive. In the first few weeks of having a fish tank, I think it actually went quite well. Uh, my goldfish's name was actually Teddy. He grew up to be quite big. And we got him a shipwreck for his fish tank, and I think he actually quite liked it. He spent quite a bit of time in there. And we got him a few plants as well, and it was all going well. We fed him every day. Um, Not too much though, so we didn't get too fat, but yeah, went quite well. This is common. The first few weeks usually go fine. Fish can seem low maintenance at first, and early success can give new owners a false sense of confidence. But small mistakes build up over time, and without realizing it, beginners may already be heading towards problem. When starting out, we looked online for information of how to take care of fish. Um, we also went to the pet store and asked them a few questions, and also my friend Oscar, we asked his family a few questions as well about what they did. So yeah. Toby did what many people do. They ask around and Google things, but not all sources are reliable. Pet stores sometimes give outdated or oversimplified advice, and friends might not know
much more than you do. Without proper research, misinformation spreads easily.
After a few months of having the fish, having teddy, I actually got a turtle as well because they were my favorite animal at that point. And one day I was smart enough to put Turtle, Frank, who's a cool turtle, in the same tank as Teddy because I thought they could become friends. Um, I was not too smart back then, and yeah, this is when my parents were not supervising me, and let's just say it didn't end too well for Teddy.
This is one of the biggest mistakes new owners make, mixing species that don't belong together. Turtles and fish may seem like a fun combo, but they really have totally different needs, and turtles can see fish as food. Often, young owners don't understand the risks until it's too late.
What I would do differently is, if I got the chance again, is I would not put Frank in the same tank as Teddy, as goldfish and turtles don't get along too well. Well, it's good for the turtle because I get a good source of protein. But yeah, I would not do that again. I would keep them in their separate enclosures.
The good news is most people do learn from these experiences, but unfortunately, it is often losing a pet for someone to realize how complex fish keeping really is. The key education, making new owners get the right information before bringing any animals home. Toby's experience, like many others, including Nick's, shows how easy it is for new fish owners to make mistakes, even with the best intentions. Whether it's trusting the wrong advice, mixing incompatible species, or just not knowing enough about the care involved, the outcome is often the same: a fish that doesn't survive. But it doesn't have to be this way. With proper research and a bit more awareness, beginners can avoid these common pitfalls. In the end, taking care of fish isn't just about setting up a tank, it's about real responsibility for another life.
Hello, my name's Alessio and I'm a Year 10 student at Christ College. My interview topic was, do Christchurch teens feel ready for the real world? Throughout my interview, I interviewed Logan Ainsworth, Eva Rose, and Tony O'Connor. Growing up as teens, we all feel life is easy and free, but there's always a massive step up from childhood to adulthood. Is our generation ready to take that leap forward? In this investigation, I'm looking into the teens of Christchurch to see if they think they are ready, and finding out if teachers and parents feel the same. I've put together a list of interviewees to get an accurate and broad perspective. First up, we have Year 13 student in Rolleston House, Logan Ainsworth.
I have a certain idea what type of career path I might take, but they're two very distinctly different sort of fields. Like one's sort of like a finance e-commerce subject, and the other is heavily science based. I probably spend a good, probably 10 minutes every day just dreading the fact that I actually have to come up with something that's going to determine the rest of my life. I feel like if I were to go out on my own tomorrow, I feel like I'd be pretty confident living by myself. I'm sure there's a couple things that I'd have to learn along the way, but overall, I feel pretty prepared. I feel like being prepared to the real world means a variety of reasons. I feel, well, first of all, I feel like being prepared for the real world, obviously, you need to have your basic skills, like you need to be able to cook, to clean, to take after yourselves, being able to put yourself into a good routine. I also feel that being prepared for the real world also means that you've got a good group of people around you. Because I feel if you were to go out in the real world, let's just say, and tomorrow I was going to live on my own, I feel like I'd need like a strong backing behind me. I feel going to university next year as well quite daunting. I feel that it's a big task and it's a big choice. It sets up the rest of your life, and it's a lot of money as well. See, if I get that wrong, then I feel like I've just wasted tens of thousands of dollars on a one decision in my life. So I'm not really sure on university at this stage.
According to a statistical graph from Stuff News, student loan debt is increasing drastically each year. From 2008 to 2015, it has consistently increased. This can make students change their career path and force them to move away from their dream jobs. Up next, Year 12 student at Rangiruru, Eva Rose.
I'm not really sure which career path I'd want to take. I was kind of hesitating between architecture and international law, but I'm really not sure for the moment. I wouldn't say that I spent a lot of time thinking about my future job necessarily, although I do put a bit of thought into it every now and then, but I do spend a bit of time thinking about my future in general, just because I think that is quite an important thing to start thinking about at my age. But yeah, definitely thinking about my career path is like something I do think about every once in a while. If I were to live on my own tomorrow, I'd say I'd feel decently confident. I mean, I feel like I do have the basic life skills necessary to take care of myself. Obviously, this would be considering if I had enough money and an actual place to stay. Obviously, I do think there'd be a couple things I'd probably have to learn and pick up on, but overall, I would say that I'm pretty confident. I'd say being prepared for the real world would be having the necessary skills to take care of yourself and be independent. Obviously, I think having the basic skills of cooking and cleaning is quite necessary, and having a decent income or a job so you can be financially stable. I also think that you need to have a strong support system behind you, like your family and friends. It's like being completely alone in the world can be tough, and having people there to support you and having people to lean back on is definitely an advantage, I'd say. Obviously, I do think it's harder these days to go out on your own when you're young due to obviously like the cost of living, rent's higher everywhere, and also the cost of food. If I did have the proper support and resources behind me, I would say that I'd feel pretty prepared to go on my own.
On the contrary, career expert Jenny Miller believes that Kiwi teens are, quote, not at all prepared to navigate post-school options, and that NCA does not necessarily prepare them for the workforce. Both teenagers had some strong opinions. Let's get a different opinion from teacher at Christ College, Tony O'Connor.
In terms of maturity and decency and common sense, the same as every other year. I find boys in this school are actually pretty well consistent over the years. They still say please and thank you. They're still polite young men, and you can have a good chat with them. In terms of academic stuff, it depends a little bit on the year group and the intake, I guess. But in terms of raw numbers, results are pretty much the same with the same level of difficulty in topics. So I would say not much difference. I find boys' attention span is less than it used to be. I never had the experience up to about 5 years ago that I found I had to take a break in the middle of a class. We could run 15-minute class, no problem at all, and the boys would be fine. But particularly the younger ones, 9s, 10s, 11s, I just find their ability to keep thinking about something over a long period of time has definitely reduced. In terms of general knowledge, I know that's reduced because I do a little quiz every year, and it's the same quiz every year, as you know. And the results on that say that over the last 22 years, we know a lot less, or teenagers know a lot less about the world that's going on around them.
When asked what skills are lacking in today's students, here is what he had to say.
I think the important ones are there. Ability to work hard, and when needed, and ability to be decent and polite. That's really important. I do think that they're lacking a little bit of worldly knowledge about what goes on in the rest of the world, so it can be quite a shock for them when they meet people from other countries, which we do all the time these days because it's the 21st century, or B, when they go abroad. and that's really important, that you have that sense of how the world works and how history works, etc. And you can't learn all that in the classroom. A lot of that is actually done just through reading the newspaper.
Both the teenagers and the teachers thought that Christchurch teens are ready for the real world. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.
Hi, I'm Henry Bothaway and I'm a Year 11 rugby player at Christ College. I've been doing some research about the recent ban of Sky Sport live streaming in New Zealand for schoolboy rugby. I found from a New Zealand Herald article that the ban had first occurred up in Auckland in the 1A division. This was because schools felt there was too much pressure on the players and that they were exposed to an unhealthy level of rugby still as under 18 men. Many Sky Sport broadcasters thought this was a stupid decision, and some family members of players complained that they wouldn't be able to watch their son, grandson, or nephew play. However, I interviewed some of the most well-known sports professionals I could find about this topic. Here's what they had to say.
Hi, I'm Henry Bothaway, and I've been aware that in 2023, the New Zealand Sky Sport franchise has had to withdraw live streaming and any other platforms for that matter, schoolboy rugby games, and I'm here to find out why. I interviewed well-known Christ College student Hugh Rooks, who also plays rugby, for his opinions on this rather debatable topic.
I think a lot of the boys felt too much pressure when they were getting streamed live on television. I think a lot of the boys just kind of wanted to play the game and not get streamed live because the pressure was too much. I think it's a great idea because a lot of people love watching their grandsons and just sons in general on television. And I also think a lot of the schools, when they don't have access to the games live in real life, I think a lot of the boys would love to watch their friends, family, and just lots of their mates just having a good time on the rugby field and just versing other their rival schools, which is a really cool aspect of the schoolboy level rugby. So I think it's a great idea to have it online, but I understand how the boys do feel a lot of pressure from it, and I understand that it can be too much sometimes. I think there's a mix between both of those. I think a lot of the boys felt if they played badly and they had a terrible game, a lot of the people, they'd get a lot of hate for it, and I also think that people would kind of look back on it at the school and he could get a lot of hate for that from the school. I think there's a mix because I think a lot of boys loved it, and I think some of them thought it was a great idea for it to be streamed live, but I also think a lot of the boys thought they were under too much pressure. That's half of the reason why it got stopped. But I also think some of the boys loved it, some of the boys hated it. It's just a mix of how they react to getting streamed live and how they wanted to play their rugby. I think it can be both because I think all the pressure in their head could lead to them messing up in the game. I think there could be too much pressure for them, so they feel like they have to play amazing, and sometimes that just doesn't happen. So I think the pressure in their head can lead to the bad games that they have on the field.
I then interviewed Director of Rugby at Christ College, Simon Mulholland, for his opinions on this topic.
So I think that it was possibly down to probably the perception of the pressure that goes on the players and the team to perform under that spotlight. And, you know, it's not only the crowd, the big crowd that are watching, but obviously the audiences that are watching on TV, and maybe that pressure it puts on an individual player or team to get those results. And I think probably not doing that, you know, means obviously there is some slightly less pressure and they can play a bit more for fun and enjoy themselves. So I think that's probably why. Yeah, I think it is good. I think as long as we just keep giving information to players around it's only a game, okay, and it's not win at all costs. It's developing them as rugby players and men, and you know, obviously we want to perform at the highest level. You always want to do that, but we just got to reiterate that there's no extra pressure on them. Although there is bigger crowds watching, potentially on TV, that it is just a game with their mates, and it is a great showcase for New Zealand schoolboy rugby. So I think, you know, when done properly, it's a brilliant thing. I think possibly, you know, for certain players, they would probably get preoccupied around rewatching highlights, trying to go back and have an emphasis on making a big play and trying to impress a lot of people during the game, and maybe losing sight of doing the simple things for the team. So I think that is definitely a danger of having those live streams, that the players will try and push to make a big play. So I think it's important we just reiterate that it's a team game, and that those kind of things will come in time after doing the hard work as a group. To be honest, depending on that individual, I think there will be, you know, in any kind of live sport, there will be a certain amount of anxiety for certain players, that they feel they have to perform in front of an audience. But then also the flip side of that is for certain players, they will love that aspect of it and they'll really enjoy it and they'll become even more confident. So I think it's just about getting that right balance.
Simon Mulholland was very keen on the idea of streaming schoolboy rugby on Sky Sport. This is because it creates a balance between playing and having the privilege of being streamed on live. This also creates opportunity for boys to rewatch their footage. However, he recommends that the boys should understand that it is just a game and we are still young. I then interviewed Head of Fitness at Rangiruru, Lucy Bothaway, on her opinions.
I reckon probably because like the pressure on the boys, like they had to conform on like those days, and it's like if they didn't, or like that pressure for like boys at a younger age will turn them away from sport. So like for future athletes, it just means there'll be less variety of boys and more boys dropping out from a younger age, so less opportunity for the future. Also, I think like in terms of just like in comparison to females, I feel like females didn't have the opportunity, so maybe it was like an equalisation sort of thing with gender equality. Yes, I do. I actually think it's like, I feel like to an extent, like obviously there's like the stigma around, oh, first 15 get filmed and second 15 don't. Like it's like, you know, the stigma around why do only the best, like I guess the best players get filmed. But then also it could be hard on boys who don't want to be filmed and have that pressure, and it could be a reason why boys stop playing rugby. But then at the same time, it can be like a motive, like, you know, boys want to get to that level so they are seen, and boys want to, you know, get an audience, because at the same time, yeah, having like supporters and knowing people are watching is like, you know, it's just a motive to keep trying, keep training and like be your best. Yeah, I reckon most players, I guess it can like vary from player to player, but most players would have felt like really privileged. I feel like it's it would have most likely have a positive impact. I guess like the support's going to help players continue under pressure and work harder when like maybe the game's not going their way. In terms of motivation, it's like a positive like driving factor to train harder and work harder. Like if you have an audience, like you've got old boys, for example, or people that are associated or have been associated with the school or that particular rugby team, it's like you want to do them proud and you want to do your school proud, and obviously you want to do yourself proud, so you're going to work harder. And in terms of pressure, I guess it's like a skill that teaches you to, you have a pressure, right? You're like playing on a game with your whole school watching, or live stream like anyone watching, and it's like the pressure of you have to do well, but when you don't do well, it's like learning to deal with that. Like, it's a real life situation that won't just apply to sport, like dealing with pressure.
As we heard, Lucy's very passionate on the idea, but she briefly touched on gender equality, which is something we haven't heard yet from any of our interviewees. After speaking to my 3 interviewees, we could tell they were clearly passionate about the idea and concept of schoolboy rugby being streamed live on Sky Sport. And after I sent this recording into Sky Sport, they have overturned the call, and now schoolboy rugby will be streamed starting on Thursday the 29th of May with Nelson College versus Marlborough Boys High School.
Hi, my name is Thomas, and my investigation was on how social media truly affects teens. For this investigation, I interviewed Year 11 students Nick Rayner and Kiva Thorley, and a parent of a frequent social media user, Ian Cave. Up first, I interviewed Nick Rayner about what social media platforms he uses, and how often they take place throughout his daily life.
Personally, I usually use Snapchat, Instagram and TikTok the most. I use Snapchat to communicate with my friends and just text, and then Instagram usually just for keeping up with what's going on in the world, and then TikTok just for when I'm bored. That really depends on how busy I am, but some days can get up to like 3 to 5 hours, and some days I cut it down to like 1 to 2 based on if I have sport or how bored I am. I usually use social media like on the weekends, like around just during the day, lunchtime usually, and then school days quite a lot straight after school finishes, seeing what's new, and yeah, sometimes at night, which isn't good because it makes it hard to sleep, but I'm trying to not do that as much.
Social platforms such as these are used by the majority of teens and are known to consume a lot of time. Next, I asked Nick if he has set any boundaries or limits to combat his use of social media.
Sometimes, usually like just before I go to sleep, I try to give myself like half an hour not on my phone, and maybe sometimes try read a book or distract myself from my phone. I took a break once because I felt quite distracted from schoolwork, and I had to sort of keep up my work ethic, so I had more time to do hobbies and less pressure.
Participating in frequent breaks of social media increases productivity for work and gives a lot of time to do other interests that benefit you. Lastly, for Nick, I questioned him on if he has changed due to the trends he has seen from influencers, and if he considers himself addicted towards social media.
If it ever was to happen, or maybe it has happened, I haven't noticed, but it would be like just because of trends. Like I wouldn't really notice it. It's just not intentional. It just kind of happens. Yes, I think it can be addictive because sometimes I catch myself scrolling mindlessly. So I'd say I do have some addictive habits, but I'm trying to manage it. And there's definitely some people who are fully addicted to social media where they just scroll all the time.
Overall, Nick shared how social media affects his daily life, his efforts to set limits, and whether trends have influenced him. He also reflected on the importance of taking breaks and staying balanced. Secondly, I interviewed Ian Cave on what his views are of teens using social media and how it seems to affect their mood and behaviour.
What I notice is that every spare moment, my kids are on social media. So a number of different things they go onto social media to do, play a lot of games, but they also like also keep in contact with their mates and like to engage in games as well with their mates in the same worlds. Kind of related to my first point there, they probably don't socialise as much with their mates like I used to when I was younger, because we didn't have social media when we were growing up. So, for example, only a limited amount of TV we had. we were basically forced to go out the house and find our own fun, so go out with our mates down the park, have a kick around. Quite serious footballers, so we used to love doing that, no problems. But nowadays, of course, because all their mates are on social media as well, in the same worlds, it's kind of like a world within a world, if you like. So a lot easier just to stay at home in the comforts of your own home and kind of be with your mates like that. So probably I would say that kids, because of social media, is not as outgoing perhaps as they used to be, not as outgoing in terms of getting out of the house and doing things, and probably not as social as they used to be either.
For teen social life, Ian is aware that most conversations are done online from when platforms were introduced to society, and how much these apps have impacted people's daily routine. For the next question, I asked Ian if he has ever tried to prevent screen time by setting limits or restrictions.
Probably not, although we do actually, on the weekends, for example, like to get our boys off of the computers to go and do some chores or get out and do something, get on their bikes, go and do something as a family. But I think because our boys swim so much, they swim, 14, 16 hours a week of swimming, plus their homework and other bits and pieces. We don't tend to have rules on their social media because we kind of trust them, and we realise that's a nice out for them as well from all their hard training they do, and from schoolwork and things like that. So we've got no problem with it, other than perhaps on the weekends they tend to be a bit long on their computers, so we tend to try and break that up somehow by doing some chores or coming out and doing some work, or going out with their mates or something.
Overall, Ian reflected on how social media shapes teen communication, shared his thoughts on screen time limits, and discussed the pros and cons it brings to daily life. Next, I interviewed Ian on how it benefits or risks teens as they use social media.
That's a very good question, and I think there are some real benefits. Number one, it sort of broadens the mind, if you like. You're able to get information fairly quickly at your fingertips, so you can actually get information fast. You can find current information. Perhaps in my day, you had to pick up a newspaper. You had to actually watch the news. You had to basically talk to your mates to get the information. But be a lot more nowadays. It's a lot more quicker to get information. Again, it's at your fingertips. One of the downsides to that, of course, is that there's a lot of disinformation on the internet as well, so on social media. So you can actually get a lot of information that may be incorrect or is biased, and sometimes kids can buy into that without really sort of having two sides to the story. So there is a danger of that. But so long as you've got open communication with your kids and they can raise some questions with you, ask questions, we tend to have a really open policy in our family where they can ask lots of questions if they're unsure, or if they see things, or if they ask things, and we can just talk as a family or as an adult child and talk through some of those things.
Overall, Ian reflected on how social media shapes teen communication, shared his thoughts on screen time limits, and discussed the pros and cons it brings to daily life. Lastly, I interviewed Kiva about how social media fits into his daily routine and whether he has felt tired or overwhelmed by it.
I use it to text my friends and snap my girlfriend. Sometimes TikTok and Instagram gets boring, and then you have to move to like Twitter and Spotlight on Snap, and it's a bit boring, but YouTube Shorts can sort of come in handy sometimes.
Now that we know what platforms he uses, I asked when he feels the most distracted by the media during the day, and if he's ever tried to cut back on scrolling.
I set a screen time myself, but I click ignore all day, every day, because I'm addicted. It's quite, it doesn't work, you know. It really affects my health. It's really bad for you. And the algorithm it's placed in a way, and it makes you addicted. Well, it doesn't exactly distract me, but I use it when I'm waiting for something or when I'm just lying down for 5 minutes.
After learning how he uses social media and how it affects him, I asked Kiva whether he feels influenced by it and if he changes himself to keep up with trends.
Yeah, I think it portrays a certain character for men in this world. You know, people wanting to be big and muscly and be rich, like Anton Marshall.
In conclusion, Kiva's responses showed how social media impacts his routine, focus, and sense of identity, highlighting both his influence and the need for balance.
Hi, I'm Tom, and my investigation is about whether marijuana should be legalized or not. In this investigation, I interviewed ChatGPT, uni student Liv Matthews, and Christ College senior Harry Flatnam.
Effects. Marijuana has THC, which can alter perception and mood. 2. Health risks. While all substances have health risks, marijuana's impact is often debated, especially regarding mental health. 3.
Hello, my name's Tom, and today I'd like to talk about a topic that continues to spark debate across the country: the legalization of marijuana. Whether it's for medical use, recreational purposes, or criminal justice reform, marijuana legalization raises important questions about health, safety, and policy. My goal today is to present a clear and balanced look at the key arguments, challenges, and potential benefits surrounding this issue. The first person I went to go ask was ChatGPT.
That's a viewpoint many people hold. Legalization can indeed lead to various changes in society. Some potential benefits people mention include 1. Economic growth. Legalization can create jobs and generate tax revenue for governments. 2. Regulation and safety. It allows for regulation, which can ensure the product is safe and not contaminated. 3. Criminal justice. It could reduce the number of people incarcerated for non-violent drug offenses. 4. Medical access. It can improve access for patients who benefit from medical marijuana. These are just a few points that are often discussed. Some concerns people have about legalizing marijuana include 1. Health risks. There may be potential health risks, especially with heavy or long-term use. 2. Youth access. Legalization could make it more accessible to minors, which could impact their development. 3. Impaired driving. There might be an increase in driving under the influence, leading to potential accidents. 4. Social concerns. Some worry about the broader social impacts, including addiction and changes in community dynamics. It's a multifaceted issue with many considerations. Economically, legalizing marijuana could have several potential benefits. 1. Tax revenue. Governments can generate significant tax revenue from marijuana sales, which can be used to fund public services like education and healthcare. 2. Job creation. The legal marijuana industry can create jobs in cultivation, distribution, retail, and more. 3. Reduced law enforcement costs. Legalization can lower the costs associated with enforcing marijuana prohibition, allowing funds to be redirected to other areas. 4. Tourism. In some regions, legalizing marijuana can attract tourists, boosting the local economy. These are some of the potential economic benefits people often discuss. Marijuana differs from alcohol and tobacco in several ways. Psychoactive effects. Marijuana has THC, which can alter perception and mood. 2. Health risks. While all substances have health risks, marijuana's impact is often debated, especially regarding mental health. 3. Addiction potential. While marijuana can be addictive, its addiction potential is generally considered lower than that of nicotine and alcohol. 4. Legal status. Marijuana's legal status varies widely around the world, unlike alcohol and tobacco, which are more universally legal for adults. Each has unique effects and considerations.
Clear to see that ChatGPT has a clear overview with why legalizing marijuana could be a positive thing and a negative thing.
Next, I asked senior student Harry Flatman.
No, I don't. I think it would benefit a lot of people that want marijuana, like individual freedom, stuff like that. There could also be some health benefits as well, because it can be used to help mitigate pain or something from cancer, stuff like that. I think it's a harmful drug, and I think it's not good for you, and if there's easy access to it, then that can cause a lot of health problems around the country. I think this would open up lots of jobs, like for harvesters and all that, if marijuana was legalized. There's just different effects on your body, a lot more mental stuff rather than physical with marijuana rather than alcohol or tobacco.
It's clear that Harry has a strong opinion on why it should not be legal but sees the benefits financially.
Next, I'll be asking Hugh Rooks about his thoughts on this topic.
No, I don't think marijuana should be legalised for the public, but I think that it could be prescriptive for some people to help them with mental health. I think some of the benefits for legalising marijuana would be a lot of stress would be relieved for a lot of people, and I also think it could maybe get some more people some jobs if, they might be able to grow it and, just relieve stress. So it also might help some mental health problems for some people. I think some non-benefits of legalising marijuana would be some people might get severely addicted, and, the health problems if you get so addicted and maybe take too much could lead to very bad health and have to pay for health in the hospital, but some people can't afford it, so yeah. I think economically is some people like to smoke weed and therefore they'd be buying a lot more, and maybe the government could sell some and therefore the government would be making more money, and then maybe if they had more money from things like weed they wouldn't have to tax as many people. So this means that people's tax rates would go down, so their income would go up, and then people's, lives and maybe houses would get a lot better, and yeah. I think that weed can affect the brain a lot more than other drugs like alcohol and tobacco, which could lead to way worse long-term effects, but I also think that alcohol and tobacco are just as bad themselves. I just think the long-term effects of weed are probably worse than having a little bit of alcohol and tobacco than having a little bit of weed.
It's pretty clear that Hugh has some good ideas about this topic and has a solid understanding of some benefits and non-benefits about legalizing marijuana. And that concludes my investigation about if people think marijuana should be legalized or not.